Welcome to Fearless Heart and Mind. I am Nora Oliver, your host. Let's talk about emotions and divorce. There are 5 common emotions people experience during the divorce process. They are often referred to as the 5 stages of grief. They include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Going through a separation or divorce can be very difficult, no matter the reason for it. It can turn your world upside down and make it hard to get through the workday and stay productive. But there are things you can do to get through this difficult adjustment. Recognize that it's okay to have different feelings. It's normal to feel sad, angry, exhausted, frustrated, and confused, and these feelings can be intense. You may also feel anxious about the future. Accept that reactions like these will lessen over time. Even if the marriage was unhealthy, venturing into the unknown is frightening. Give yourself a break. Give yourself permission to feel and function at a less than optimal level for a period of time. You may not be able to be quite as productive on the job or care for others in exactly the way you're accustomed to for a little while. No one is a superman or superwoman. Take time to heal, regroup, and re-energize. Don't go through this alone. Sharing your feelings with friends and family can help you get through this period. Consider joining a support group where you can talk to others in similar situation. Isolating yourself can raise your stress levels, reduce your concentration, and get in the way of work, relationships, and just overall health. Don't be afraid to get outside help if needed. Now, I have Kat Blake, a licensed independent clinical social worker, divorce and relationship coach, psychotherapist, and director of a National Associate of Divorce Professionals. She has been featured at WebMD, Bustle, WBZ News, Scary Mommy, and Medium podcast host of Happily Ever Divorced, All Things Divorced, and Dating with Kat. She can be reached at www.katblakecdc.com. So welcome, Kat.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
It's so good to have you here. So let's talk about the emotional stages during the divorce process.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much that you just said that's chock full of information that I think viewers would want to hear. So it's so good that you touched on so many points. But absolutely, I always tell people that getting through a divorce is much more complicated than even dealing with the loss of a loved one. Because you're really grieving somebody who's still alive, and you might actually have to be parenting with that person. So it makes it much more difficult. It's not easy.
No, absolutely. I mean, from the beginning of the thought of I actually want a divorce to having to go through making that decision and then going through the actual divorce. And then, of course, so much of the unknown. It can be very scary for people.
Right.
I know from personal experience, I was terrified to just say the words, I want a divorce.
Right,
it took me a few years to really make that decision. And even when I myself made that decision, I was afraid to say it out loud.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the hardest decisions you'll probably ever make in your life. I'm divorced as well. And I think what people don't realize, because I think there's this sort of myth or stereotype perhaps, that if you're the person that initiated the divorce, then you bypass all the stages of grief. And that's absolutely not true. You still go through the same stages. It might look a little bit differently, but it's still there. There's still a lot of loss involved.
Absolutely, right. I mean, you have to consider everything that you may be going through, and not just yourself, but if you have, your spouse, if you have children, and your family members as well. I'm sure it will affect them in some way. So, I talked about the very first stage, which is
the denial.
Denial.
Yes. Yep.
It's, if we could talk a little bit about that. I know most people may go through it and just not really admit what's going on and why they may want to go through this process.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, so I want to introduce a concept too. I think there's cognitive dissonance for a lot of people. So it's sort of, I don't want to call it the healthy, unhealthy part of you, but there's a side of you that knows getting out of this marriage, it might be toxic, it might be dysfunctional, is the best thing to do. but our brain craves consistency, and our brain does not like change because change brings up fear, loss of control, all kinds of other things. So our brain sometimes wants to do the easy thing, which is just keep going back to what we know, even if what we know isn't so great. So making that first decision and sticking with it is really, really tough. And what I see in the work that I do is a lot of people get even through denial, and they get into anger and even to bargaining, and they'll often go back.
Right.
And sometimes people will go through that 3 or 4 times before they actually make the decision to go for the divorce. So.
Absolutely. I think denial is probably the hardest piece when it comes to starting the process, because it's the very beginning of making that, pushing yourself to go through that process. And then I think once you start the process, you kind of start to slowly heal and go through that, which I would say my next stage would be anger. Right. Oh, absolutely. I made this decision. Oh, is it the right choice? There's a lot of flip-flopping when it comes to that decision.
Yes.
And then you're thinking, oh, I made my kids go through this. I'm making myself go through this, and I can't function the right way, or, you're just questioning yourself so much, and you're adding more to it, right?
Yes. And there's people, I will say, I work with people in all stages, people who are thinking about divorce, going through, and post-divorce. But I have worked with many people who've come back to me 4, 5, 6 years post-divorce, and they're still stuck in the anger stage. And I think, that is a trap. That can also become part of your identity. I'm the betrayed spouse. I'm the person who was victimized by my ex-husband or wife. And so it's a really big shift, I think, moving from anger to bargaining. And so hopefully working with a divorce coach or a therapist who's aware of these issues can help move you through the process as well.
I 100% agree that I think one should get help. Working with a divorce coach who absolutely knows all the stages, understands how to process all these emotions, and so that you're a better version at the end of all of it. And if what are the downside of not getting the help, and you think you can handle this on yourself, and then you end up in a far worse case, and you're not processing all these different emotions.
Absolutely. Well, so as a divorce coach, I'm trained as a therapist, but I'm also trained in the legal process of divorce. And I think that is the number one mistake that people make going through their divorce. I know I made this mistake, which is why post-divorce I was trained as a divorce coach. I never wanted people to make the mistakes I made. But your attorney is not your friend and not your therapist. And so when you keep calling the attorney, I think what people need to understand is that your legal representative is just there, and in every state they look at divorce as if you're breaking up a business. They're looking at asset division and what is the parenting plan. They're not particularly concerned with the emotions, and they're not trained on how to deal with the emotions.
100% agree. They may feel bad for you with everything you're going through, but they can't support you when it comes to you processing everything emotionally that you're going through.
Absolutely.
And they're just focused on, legally making sure that, they're doing their job. Splitting everything up.
Right. So the hope is that you're dealing with the emotions outside of the legal process, and then you're able to get down to the business of it with either your mediator or your attorney.
Absolutely. And it's something to think about if you have children as well, because they're going through their own emotions as well. So I think getting help for them ahead of the process might actually make a huge difference while you're going through the process itself.
Absolutely.
So it may not be a divorce coach when it comes to the children, but I think finding somebody that understands the process of what emotions a child might go through, it would be a lot helpful, because there are so many therapists out there that they do tend to focus, in particular areas. They have a lot more experience on different areas that a person may have gone through.
Absolutely.
And help you. So
and I beg people, find somebody who's really truly trained in divorce. Just because somebody is licensed as a therapist does not actually mean they have experience nor training in divorce. And I have worked with a number of cases where people, well-intentioned therapists, but have actually made cases worse. So you really want to work with somebody who has experience, particularly if you're dealing with somebody, if you're divorcing somebody who has addiction or a personality disorder. You want somebody who's really knowledgeable around what's going on with that. So
absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up. I would say if anyone has been in a abusive relationship of any kind, I would say get help before you file for a divorce.
Yes.
You know, in that case, you're a lot more emotionally stable, because if you're already emotional with what's been going on, going through divorce, you're just gonna kind of skyrocket in your emotions. So I think you have to get those in control before you
Absolutely.
move along. But of course, you're going through denial, anger, bargaining, then you could lead to depression. You know, most people, if they're not,
Right.
like we just talked about, if you don't handle your emotions well enough and you're going day to day with everything that, you know, with your divorce is going on, and your children, if you have children, or your business, I mean, it can affect you in so many ways. So I think making sure that you get help prior to divorce, it would really help avoid depression.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I want to give people a little bit of light, because the research shows that 95% of people post-divorce say they made the right decision and they're actually much happier with their lives. Children are actually emotionally doing much better a year post-divorce. So I think for all the fear, and it definitely feels like ripping off a Band-Aid, everything in your life is thrown up in the air for negotiation, can be redefined. But there's so much opportunity for you to really, like you were saying, not just survive divorce, but thrive post-divorce.
Exactly.
You have the chance to redefine your life the way you want it to be for you.
100%,
not just for your
yes,
spouse,
yes.
not because you think that's what you're supposed to do, but to really make it you.
You,
which
right.
is amazing.
Find out, you know, who you really are,
Yep.
and you're not just living under somebody else's expectations.
Absolutely.
I think that is a great time and place to really find yourself and look at what kind of life do you actually want to live, and
Right.
also maybe dig deeper and find out what kind of person do you actually want in a partner. A lot of times,
Absolutely.
we don't do that work prior to choosing our
No.
partner, and then, you know, I don't want to say that's the main reason why we get, you know, such high divorce rates. You know, there's other reasons, but
Right.
that can be a really big reason. If you don't know and you're not sure as to who you want to be with, I mean, you know, what do you expect the
Right.
relationship to end us?
Well, step
end up?
number one is really knowing yourself deeply.
Yes.
And I don't think many of us are taught the skills to do that.
We are not. We are not.
And I think there's a lot of pressure to get married by a certain age. I mean, as women, there's, you know, you're thinking about wanting to start a family. I mean, there's just a lot to it. But the
Right.
reality is, and that's why I actually do the dating coaching on the other end of it, is because I really want people to heal and to be knowledgeable when they start picking their next partner in their life, because the divorce rate actually goes up for second and third marriages, and that's usually from people who have not done the work that they needed to have done before they moved forward, right?
Right.
But when we're dating, I mean, I did it as a trade therapist, we tend to be attracted to people who are going to trigger something. They're going to trigger an
Similar
unmet
to
childhood
your last partner,
needs,
right?
right?
It is a
Yep.
right. Which I lost the word really, but it is a pattern that we follow.
And it's a
through,
quest for
unless
us. We're actually trying to heal ourselves. Like there's nothing dysfunctional in and of itself with that. But if you have the right skills, the right knowledge, the right ability to navigate that, you can create a relationship that's actually healing of you and meeting your unmet childhood needs versus one that's re-traumatizing you. But most of us who are dating in our 20s and 30s don't know this stuff, right?
Right. Well, it
So-
also explains yourself. You know, you may go through the first divorce, and then you know you haven't really done the work as to what you want in a partner. So you end up in the second marriage,
Right.
and then third marriage, and you're just like, well, why am I having all these divorces?
Right.
You know.
So
cases?
one of the
So-
things you said, which I love, by the way, I'm so happy that we connected, is acknowledging your feelings. And I think in our culture at large, there is an allergy to vulnerability. There's an allergy to having strong emotion, right? It's sort of like pull yourself
agree.
up, push that aside, and keep going. And so I do think that when people make repetitive sort of relationship mistakes, a lot of it is because they're numbing out, and they're numbing out all of those feelings around divorce. They're not acknowledging them and honoring them.
Right.
Like honor the rage, honor the depression, honor the sadness. You don't have to medicate it away. You don't have to drink it away. You don't have to date it away. Like let yourself
Right.
feel all the feelings, because that's going to help you in the long run. And it's a necessary
course.
part of your healing.
Of course, I agree with that. So let's look at this in a different way. Do you think that males or females suffer more when it comes to their emotions? Or do you think it's about the same?
I think it's about the same. more women initiate the divorce process than men. I think that more men engage in denial in the beginning stages than women. But other than that, I would say that across the board, men and women, it's
Equally.
a loss. Nobody gets married thinking that they will be divorced. And half my clients are women, half are men. And they're really struggling with some of the same issues.
Right.
They might deal with it in very different ways.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that's why it's harder for some people to see. Because we process our emotions differently. So you may see it more in a female. They look more emotional, but that's, I think, because we just process it more out there.
Right.
And males, they tend to keep it inside and process it internally.
Absolutely. And so the other thing is, one of the amazing things that I think women know how to do, and I know I'm being sort of generalist here, but women are great at networking. They're great at creating friendships and support systems, and they often have that in place with the divorce process. Men suffer because they're not so great at cultivating friendships. So a lot of my men go through divorce and they're feeling extremely alone with no one to turn to, and they isolate and keep it inside. Whereas women will go talk to their girlfriends, they'll talk to their moms, they'll join support groups. So I actually have a support group for women. We meet online. That's
great.
It always books up. My men never come to online support groups. They will come to activity groups. So I actually have done hiking.
You think it's because of the denial phase?
I think it's denial, and I think it's, again, society doesn't want men necessarily expressing strong emotion. A strong emotion can be seen as a weakness for them. But yeah, I've done hiking trips, and it will be like 25 guys hiking up a mountain, and they're talking about all the same things that women talk about, but it's based around an activity. So
that makes sense. Absolutely. So when it comes to seeking professional help, when do you think it's time to take that step?
I think everybody should have somebody in their corner when they're going through divorce, even if it's a low conflict divorce, because I think it's just so needed. And whether, so here's the difference between therapy and coaching, because I'm a therapist and a coach. Some people come to me and I say, you know what, I think it's better for us to start in the therapy lane, and maybe we'll move to the coaching lane a little later. And some people come and they're just ready to jump on that coaching work. Therapy is really about supporting you where you're at. It's ego supportive, it's sympathizing, it's understanding, and some people need that. Coaching is very much about accountability. Who do you want to be post-divorce? What's pulling you off track? What's not allowing you to be the best person that you can be? And let's get you back on track and getting you there as quick as possible. So I actually do a combination of both, but some people really do just need the therapy for a while, before they can get into one of my coaching groups. In my coaching groups, the women are like, come on, girl, get it together, let's go. And I think, you need to feel strong enough to be able to really engage in that kind of work. So support groups are wonderful. I know when I was going through my own divorce, there was a book that I read, and it was just 25 women and their divorce stories. And that felt so healing for me, because people don't talk about divorce, right? We all talk about falling in love, we talk about getting married, we talk about having children, but there's no social scripts for divorce.
It's a negative event. That's how it's seen.
So people feel really like, am I doing this right? Is this how it's supposed to go? And so just hearing other people's stories, I think, is an incredible healing power for everybody.
I actually wish I joined a support group when I was going through my divorce. I could see it helping me quite a bit, and of course I didn't seek any professional help, which I think made it worse for me when it came to my emotions. I wasn't processing everything, and having to care for children, having to go through the divorce itself. I didn't have room for myself. I didn't make room for myself. To take care of myself. So I highly recommend that.
Absolutely.
Start before you even make that decision.
Yep. And your friends and family are lovely, and they want to help you out, which is great. However,
they are not the experts.
Well, it's not even that, but it's, a lot of the work I do is with high conflict divorce cases. And every time you get yourself into that inflamed, angry mode, like your organs swell, your heart beats faster, and it takes 2 hours to actually calm back to baseline. So sometimes what can happen is, I know I did this, but when you're talking to your friends and your family, the people who also maybe despise your ex or they think they're doing the right thing because they're supporting you, is you can end up re-traumatizing yourself over and over and over and over again. So like I said before, there's value in honoring your experiences and your feeling, but that's where coaching comes in. It's like, okay, here's the feeling. How can we convert this? How can we help you move from victim mode into creator mode?
Yes.
How can we help you move from anger at your other person to forgiveness of yourself?
Yes.
So it's really making a big shift.
So you're moving
So
from that.
you have to really be careful, because some of the people that are trying to help you the most, sometimes the best thing they can do is say, you know what, Nora, on Sunday we're gonna, I don't know, go bowling and go out for drinks, and I'm not gonna allow you once to talk about your divorce.
You know what, that is actually great, because I did have a friend that I realized this is my only friend that always brought up my ex.
Right.
And always would ask questions. Oh, what, you know, how's it going with that? Or did he reach out? Or did he do that? And it brought back all the emotions.
Absolutely.
And it would make me emotional when I was in a great place emotionally.
Right.
So I've actually, you know, opened up to that friend and said, you know what, I think it would be best if we don't bring this up every time we meet or have a conversation, because it, you know, it would bring me back to that that place.
Absolutely.
And
so I've been divorced since 2010, and my mom still brings up stuff about my ex-husband, and I'm like, Mom, can we please let this go? Like, you know, it's time to move on, to have some peace and forgiveness, and but absolutely.
Yes, yeah, I've gone through those phases where I've processed all my emotions and figured out what I want in a partner, figured out what I want in my life, who I am as a person, and all my dreams and my purpose in life as well. So, you know, now I don't want to talk about my exes. I don't want to bring that up. I mean, you know, they have questions, it's a difference, but constantly talking about it.
Absolutely.
Definitely leave it in the past. So, when would you say a person is ready, emotionally?
Ready to go through the divorce?
No, to actually go through dating again. Start dating again.
That's a really good question.
Mean, they're going to want to at some point, but what are some signs that they're ready for it?
I would say if you're very, very triggered by your ex and still incredibly angry, it is not a good time to be dating. I actually would call that reactive dating or revenge dating. So if you're able to maintain most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, a sense of indifference towards your ex, you're probably now emotionally free and ready to start dating. That's a big key to it. Yes. So I also think for many of us, when we first divorce, and I call it loneliness kindergarten, we're trying to get used to, even if you've been alone in the past before marriage, but get used to being comfortable with yourself, get used to entertaining yourself, kind of tending to your own garden, you know, nurturing yourself, because those are ultimately skills that you're going to need if you're going to date healthy. If you're out there in the dating world, which is what I think a lot of us, I know I did it. I had to learn the hard way. I'm trying to save you guys bruises that I got. But if you're out there dating, looking for somebody to fill that need for you, you're much more susceptible to meeting another toxic person. You're much more willing to bend for a relationship for the sake of the relationship that might not be good for you in the long run. And I will tell you, breakups post-divorce hurt 1,000 times more than the divorce.
They actually do.
They do.
Yes.
So that's like a big key. I want to hear that somebody's really okay being by themselves. They have a new set of friends. They have new activities. They're okay spending a night by themselves watching Netflix. I think that's really key.
I agree. I think you have to find out who you are as a person, and most importantly, be able to make yourself happy on your own.
Yes.
On your own, without being with someone, without somebody doing things for you, or constantly seeking their, you know, I need somebody with me. Whether it's a friend or a partner, you have to do that work and feel okay on your own.
Absolutely.
To just be able to live on a day-to-day. And if you can't do that, then, you know, you can't go out and date and expect somebody else to make you happy and fulfill that, you know, emptiness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So true. So I do dating coaching as well.
That was my next question.
And the dating coaching came after the divorce coaching, because in COVID, a lot of my folks were coming back and saying, I need help with dating. And at the time, the only way you could meet people in the middle of COVID was online.
Right.
So I really started to coach people going through that. And I realized it was really part of the same process. It's part of healing. It's part of gaining self-worth. It's part of challenging the mindset. What is your internal GPS system that leaves you feeling unlovable, unworthy? But it's a lot of the same skills, right? That we're teaching in divorce coaching is we're now using in dating coaching.
I love that, because not only are you helping them find a mate, but you're actually coaching them to find out what they want. What
Absolutely.
is it that you want?
Yep. What are your values?
Yeah.
How do you screen for somebody who's going to be good for you? Like I was saying before, we tend to be attracted to people who are going to trigger something from our past, but how do you verbalize your needs to somebody in the beginning of the relationship versus putting your needs on the back burner, and then seeing how they show up if they're able to meet those needs for you, and not tolerating it if they don't. It's not their fault. They don't have to be evil people. They just might not be your match. They're not going to be a relationship that heals you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I think, I mean, we don't have to get into this now, but there's definitely a few things you have to figure out what you want in a person, you know, from what their values are and what they want in a person as well. So you may know what you want in a person, but maybe the other person doesn't know what they want as well.
Absolutely.
So then it leaves you with that gap of, I know what I want, I think this person is the person for me, but then the other person is lost and confused, and, you know, do you want to get into that relationship? So I know there's a whole, you know, book.
Oh, we could talk about that for like hours.
Yes.
Yeah, because and also if you've done your inner work, you want somebody else who's done their inner work as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't like to use this, but nobody wants a fixer-upper.
Right. Right.
Because then, I mean, you know, if the other person hasn't done that work, and, you know, you can't really connect as well. You can't see the values in life in the same, you know, with the same mirror.
Right.
So you kind of have to figure that out. And of course, have those discussions, right? Don't be afraid to discuss what they want in a partner. Don't be afraid to discuss, you know, of course, financials as well. Yeah. How would you handle that? Because that is
huge.
One of the biggest divorce, you know, when it comes to divorce, that's one of the biggest reasons why, you know, one may get divorced. So kind of figure all that out. You know, I started with a vision board for myself.
Oh, yeah.
I've, you know, figured out myself, and then I still have my vision board where it really has all the values, everything I want in a partner. It's a daily reminder, okay, this is what I want, you know.
Yes.
Somebody has a red flag.
It's not because this is what I'll be like, what do you want in a partner? And the first, I'll get answers like tall, dark hair, nice, no, it's not that.
Not the physical, but you have, yes, I mean, that might make a difference on someone, right? But you have to connect emotionally, spiritually.
How do you want to feel when you're with this person? What does this person do after a tough day of work? Do you engage in the same activities? Do you have the same retirement goals? Do you have the same ideas around parenting? So there's a lot to it.
Family oriented, or you know, what are your travel needs? Or, I mean, there is a lot that goes with it. It is not a, like, you know, one click, make a decision, I'll be with this person. It's not just a physical thing. You know, that person looks great. It definitely, you know, she's the one, he's the one. So there's a, you know, I wish this was taught.
I know.
To, you know, early on, like, oh, this is how you find yourself. Okay, this is what I want in a partner. You know, go out there in the world and experience it and find it out.
It would be so great if we learned this in high school. We wouldn't have such a high divorce rate. That's what I
think it would make such a huge difference. But not only that, but I think live as, you know, happier as people overall, because we know what we want. We know where we're headed. We have like a path that we created for our lives and a vision, and it's easier to achieve all those things in our lives than, you know, not knowing at all. Just kind of guessing and getting hurt and lost and making bad decisions. And I mean, there's a lot that can go through it, you know, in that topic.
For sure.
But so is there anything else that you would recommend that maybe one do or focus their attention to?
I think when you're going through divorce, I mean, you're having to make so many decisions that have lifelong and generational implications. I mean, these are not little decisions that you're making, and you're making them at a time when you're feeling probably not so great, maybe even the lowest point of your life. Right. So that, and then you have to show up for your children and be present for your children. So it is really, it's a balancing act, and it's tough. And somehow to find the ability to implement a regular routine of self-care is so important. So all of us know that to stay physically healthy, we have to go to the gym and exercise and eat vegetables and all that. But a lot of people don't know that slowing down, learning how to slow down your central nervous system on a regular, disciplined way, on a basis, so that you can access that, not just when you're in the middle of a fight, but on the regular, you can slow down your system. Journaling, where you're paying attention to yourself and your thoughts and your mindset. So we have 52 thoughts a minute. We're only typically aware of 10% of our thinking, which is usually I call it the stupid stuff, right? Like, I gotta pay my bills, I gotta get to this place at 3, but underneath of that all, we're saying things to ourselves all the time, like, what is my worth? You know, can I trust people? Am I lovable? What is something about me that I don't want people to see? And so we have to like bring that to the top. And the way we do that is with journaling and slowing down and paying attention to ourselves, so that we can challenge it and update the system so that your thoughts are actually helping you versus hindering you. But all of that, meditation, Reiki, hypnotherapy, hot yoga is the thing for me. But you have to find something that's taking care of you, and you have to implement it on a regular, not just when you're drained.
Right, in a regular basis.
Right.
Make it your thing. But I think that comes with the territory of finding yourself.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And finding out what helps you in like so many ways, like what is the best thing for you to do when it comes to self-care, you know.
Absolutely.
For some people, self-care may be just having a glass of tea and sitting in a quiet, enjoying the nature, but some others may be hot yoga or getting the nails done or
hiking,
you know, just
anything. Yep.
It could be very different for every single person. So that's something for them to do that work and figure it out for each individual.
So one of the journaling and exercises that I love to give my folks is they have 2 journals. The first journal they open up every day. They have to do it for 5 to 10 minutes a day. And that's where you write out, I call it the vomit, right? So you write out the anger, the sadness, the negative thoughts, the frustrations, the depression, and then you close it, and then you open up the second journal, and every day you write things that you have gratitude about, something you're proud of yourself that you accomplished, who you want to connect with that day, and what your intention is for the day.
That.
So it's sort of acknowledging the negative, but then it's that shift of letting it go and being able to move forward so that you're moving to be the person that you're meant to be.
Right.
Right.
No, I love that. I always recommend my clients to journal because it's helped me a lot, and I still do that every day, especially on days that I'm having a difficult day. I'll journal, and it helps me instantly.
Yep.
I just write down. I don't worry about what I'm writing. I just write everything that's going through my head, every little thing, and then I feel like a completely different person. I can go from having a really bad day to 5 minutes later, wow, everything I had in my head, in my mind, emotions, it's gone.
Yep.
It really works. It can work that fast.
Yep, absolutely. Like sometimes I'll read my things and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been saying that to myself
and I do
for the
go
past
back and
5
read it.
days.
Yes.
I can't believe, no wonder I'm so mad and angry and upset. You know, like I wouldn't say that to my best friend. Why am I saying that to myself? You know?
I go back and read it too. Sometimes I'm like, what did I write? And the thing is, I don't remember. I'm like, wow, this is what I actually wrote. This is how I was feeling. This is what I was worried about. And journaling is especially, important to do if you're having like anxiety attack. If you're very anxious about something, you may not realize what you're anxious about.
Right.
But if you write it down, it actually comes out because you're so anxious in your head, you don't even know what you're writing.
Right.
So it's like important to just get it out. And I find that more useful than actually sometimes talking to a friend or family member about whatever I'm struggling with, because writing it down, it's just more instantly, it's all coming out. I don't have to phrase it. I don't have to put it in a sentence. I can just kind of
just say it out. And my big thing is that, I don't know if you know, but I do retreats and I call them let go to grow, because you can't let go of something you don't acknowledge, and then you can't grow.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
But you absolutely have to let go in order to grow.
Absolutely.
It's just a necessary step. So
yeah, well, when you think about it, we have all these things that we go through in life, just emotions itself. We don't even think about it, how much it entails, how much we don't actually know how to process. We are not educated well enough. Even though we may be in our 30s or 50s or 60s, we still don't know how.
Right. But
It's
again,
kinda
I
sad,
think that goes
right?
back to that like vulnerability, right? I think
Yeah.
and maybe, you know, I'm sort of focusing on our culture. I'm sure it's this way in other cultures as well, but there is definitely a like, ooh, that's a messy emotion, like put it away, you know, don't make somebody uncomfortable or don't burden some. I mean, I think we get all these messages. And so what we do is we sort of, again, we numb it out, we push it down. Brene Brown talks a lot about this.
She does,
But
yes,
that
yeah.
vulnerability is where it's at. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us able to connect with other humans and create loving relationships. So it's learning how to cultivate that in a way where it's effective to you. I think people hear vulnerability and they think it's like, oh, a doormat or I'm a puddle and I'm
Negative,
crying
yeah.
all the time. And that's actually not what it is. It's really just paying attention to that inner core of you. It's paying attention to your gut, because that inner core is going on nonstop, whether you want to shut
Well,
the
it's
program
telling you
off.
there's something that you
Right.
need to focus on, either whether you need to admit something or, you know,
Right.
kind of figure out what it is the next step that you need to take to kind of let it out.
Like so many of my folks will come in, they'll be like, oh, you know, maybe it's their partner or a boss, and I blah blah blah, and they'll go on for 10 minutes, and I'm like, oh, did you say that to the person? They're like, no. I'm like, oh, so that was what was going on inside. Yes. Okay, how can we honor that?
Right.
Because that inside voice is your true voice. That's your core,
It
and
really
there's value
is. It
there.
knows what you need to focus on, and that's why we have all these panic attacks.
Right.
Because we have all these internal emotions that we're so scared to, you know, process and let them out, that it creates anxiety for us. It
Right.
creates these
Keep
panic
pushing down.
attacks.
Yep.
Right. Because we're not in tune with our own selves.
Right.
So you have to understand every emotion. I think it is so important to really be in
Key.
control of your emotions all the time.
Absolutely. So true.
Well, Kat, I really appreciate you being here.
Thank
I think this was
you.
great. I hope our viewers get to really reach out to you and seek for help the moment that they feel like, you know what, something is off.
Absolutely.
And you know,
Yeah,
just
don't
not be afraid
do it alone.
to
Don't do
yeah.
it alone. That's all I can
And
say
it's,
to everybody.
even if you feel like, you know what, my life is perfect, there's nothing that I need to fix. You know, I've been there. I've been one of those people. Then, you know what, just reach out and have a 30-minute conversation and see
Yep.
if there is some areas that you want to focus on. I mean,
Absolutely.
you never know unless you try.
Unless you try. Absolutely.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Fearless Heart and Mind. I am your host, Nora Alver. We'll see you next time. Thank you.